Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Darren with Livable City. Welcome to our second Thursday Thoughts. Before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to our terrific sponsor, Sonic Internet. There's been a lot of changes the last couple months, and thank you for hanging in there with us and making our work possible. During today's program, if you have any questions, please enter the questions on the comments below. I'd like to introduce you to, a lot of you already know her, Katy Birnbaum, the queen of Sunday streets. Hello, Katy.
Hello there, Darren. Thank you for having me on today. And thank you, Sonic, too.
Yeah, that's right. And Rogelio, thanks very much again for being a great person to work with. So as a lot of you out there know, Sunday Streets has been this terrific sort of street activation, miles and miles and miles of street openings, car-free streets, everyone coming out from the neighborhoods to celebrate their culture and celebrate their lives together. And times are different now. And so here's Katy, the queen of Sunday Streets. And Katy, you know, in this time of the pandemic, where we can't really get together these giant parties, as you see in the pictures behind us, how is our work on the street still relevant?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm in need of a big party sometime soon here. So there is need for that at some point. we all definitely need to look forward to it. But really at its core, you know, Sunday Streets has always been about empowering communities to see their streets as spaces that can hold community, that can hold health and wellness, that can hold joy, and is not necessarily just there for people to get to and from work and home, that it is actually a space for humanity to be in its full and beautiful, vibrant self. And that work is more needed than ever right now to create spaces where people are able to connect with their humanity and have a little bit of a sense of normalcy and life during this time. And I think that is really, really important to keep that alive and keep people able to access that resource of a space to rejuvenate and be together.
So that's, you know, when I first came to Livable City, that was kind of news to me. Like, aren't streets for vehicles? Aren't streets to, like, if I'm living here and my job's over there, I just want to get there as fast as possible. So like, what are you talking about? Like, how do we make a street a place for all this? And you know, I mean, I know, you know, Sunday streets are fun and great, but so you're talking about that this usage of streets should happen at more often than just once in a while. That's kind of a new idea for a lot of people, I think.
Right, absolutely. I mean, everybody, you know, the world and the physical built world that we live in right now, the main time that people interact with streets is when they're either in a vehicle or they are transporting themselves from work to home. Sometimes work to play. I mean, that's a good day, right? That's a good day for folks when they're transporting themselves from work to play. But there still is this idea of transportation, right? That it is just to be able to get from here to there. And I think that's very much, you know, a result of our culture and our society of being very productivity oriented, right? We have to have a purpose. We have to be creating some type of productivity. Otherwise, our actions don't necessarily have meaning. And so then our built and physical environment is very much a reflection of that. And that's roadways that are only meant for taking people to a productive activity, which is either work or going and spending that money that they earned at work at play. But it's only about moving people for that productivity. However, we also all know that, you know, productivity is actually it's not what makes a life that's worth living, right? It's all the beautiful things that happen in between and outside of that productivity. Productivity helps you have a job, a paycheck, you know, kind of plug into some of the expectations of society. But what do people really want? They want family, they want connection, they want a sense of belonging, they want to feel good in their own body, have a physical wellness and mental wellness of their own being. And those things don't necessarily happen on your way to go being productive, right? They happen in between. They happen during times of recreation, during times of relaxation. And so it is yeah, exactly. People don't necessarily think of your streets that way, but they desperately want more time to spend with family, more time to spend on their health and well-being, both mentally and physically. And so when you think about it, the most accessible place to do that, the most accessible and also egalitarian place to do that is in the street space that actually connects all of these people together. And ultimately is the space that takes you from home to work to play. But what if that space in between was also where you rejuvenated and where you actually got the things that you're desperately trying to find time for outside of your productivity transportation?
Right. No, you know, it's interesting as you talk about that, you brought back, as we talked before, like my son just graduated from college, my daughter is in high school, and as you were talking about that, I realized that some of my best memories are of my kids and sometimes myself out there in the street in front of our place, playing ball, playing pretend games, shooting off fireworks. The street, I'm realizing, has been an important part of our family growing up together, because, you know, we didn't have to go really far. We didn't have to separate to have someone having fun while someone's doing something at the home. It actually enabled us to stay together and do sort of different things and still stay in view of each other, still enjoy each other's company. Now, one data point I've heard which really surprised me, and of course now that I think about it, it's so obvious, but I learned that our streets are something like 20 or 25% of our of the city's surface area. What kind of implications does that have for our crises around affordability, community building, things like that?
Right, exactly. Like just like you said, 25% of San Francisco's only 49 square miles, right? And it's a radical concept to think of space in this city because it is so tiny. However, a quarter of that rarefied space is dedicated to roadways. And a majority of that roadway space is dedicated to vehicle travel and or storage. And just like you were saying, that is all of the moments of life that folks normally, or now in our current society, are actually either being experienced in their home, if they're lucky, in their backyard, could be happening in the street, or should be happening in the street. And so that's 25% or a quarter of our city that could be filled with humanity and living and the actions of life, which is a place to live, but also, spending time with your children outside in a safe space that is in community with your neighbors, that builds a sense of collective well-being with the people that you live with. Not just in your own home, but on your block and in your neighborhood.
Okay. What's the future? So again, sort of pre-pandemic, post, we're still in the pandemic. We're not post-pandemic yet. What is the future of street activation, or what are some possibilities in terms of livable cities work? And what neighborhoods need this kind of work? What might we be doing to still have streets fulfill these functions, but in a way that's safe and that helps people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, a really big and important part to think about in all of this is, I would love a glass of water too, Darren. Can you hand me some as well?
Sure. Well, if you don't mind, here you go.
Oh, thank you.
It's my best water.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the purpose of Sunday Streets has always been about empowering communities to feel, to see their streets as a place for community gathering. But a really important part of that we're seeing nationally and locally is who feels like they have access to that space. Does everybody, and especially Black and brown bodies and folks who are in Black and brown bodies and having that space, do they feel comfortable and do they feel like they're able to be in that space in the street? And that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of work on the government side and as a society to ensure that everybody feels like they're welcome and safe in that space. And with the amount of trauma that a lot of marginalized communities experience around being over-policed, even around street violence, and or around being ostracized by community members that for whatever reason don't view them as part of the community that they absolutely are a part of. It takes, we absolutely need opportunities and programs that invite those folks to imagine a space that is comfortable for them and that transforms a street that might be a site of a lot of trauma, or just a feeling of being locked out, of not belonging, into a site of a place for belonging and for gathering and a celebration of their culture, their community, and their place in a neighborhood and in that street.
Right. Yeah, I'm realizing that as you say that, where when I told the story from my family in terms of the street as an opportunity for us to grow, what I'm hearing from you is that there are communities, there are people for whom the space is actually more of a risky proposition, that heading out there might actually expose you to dangers and trauma and all that.
Absolutely, and I think the conversations that we are finally having on a national level and organizationally and on a city level around the reality that Black people face in public spaces is something that we need to stick with, and we need to continue that conversation and really be thinking about that as we move into street programs during COVID-19 and what that looks like, and how that response is facilitating Black communities who they don't feel safe in public spaces, often do not feel safe in public spaces for a variety of reasons. How can we develop our programs so that they are the most supportive for specifically that community to have a sense of empowerment and ownership over spaces that have historically really been, they've been deprived of.
Right. So how, could you comment a little bit on then what has the role, what has been the role of the streets in allowing people to kind of take back some of that space? It's been really interesting the past couple months.
Right. Yeah. And the power of streets, right? So we're talking about the power of streets right now. I've had the privilege with Sunday Streets to work with a lot of marginalized communities and work through the process of getting them into the street. And I see the power of that kind of on the backside of it, working through permitting and different types of approval processes and whatnot. And it's a struggle. It is often a struggle to get out into the street. However, it is really powerful for those communities to have that space where they can celebrate their own communities, their culture, and have a place for joy. And I think everybody can kind of begin to see what we've had a lot of experience doing in the protests, the beautiful protests that have been so effective at moving public policy across the country since the murder of George Floyd. We see that. I think folks understand and see the power that streets have when they're during times of protest, right? And we've seen that across our country right now. We're living in a moment where at almost any major city and even small towns across the country have taken to the street and actually changed policy for their communities and saved their lives, changing the trajectory of their lives and their children's lives by taking to the street and demanding the changes that they need. It's interesting how these sort of larger concepts play out in a very micro level. One of the big surprises to me in joining Livable City is how incredibly difficult it is for a community to get
all the permits it needs to just come out and enjoy themselves for a day on the street. Is there did that just happen by accident? Is there a connection between why that's so incredibly difficult? And I can't, to our listeners, I cannot underplay how difficult it is to get all these needed permits, and the benefits that a community can have by having better access to the streets. Is there some sort of connection there?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, you know, there are some legitimate public safety and considerations that permitting does allow for us to control for, and the city to control for. I think there is some necessity for that. However, the level of difficulty that has been introduced to the process of getting street space in San Francisco is absolutely a power dynamic. And you know, if you think about the power that thousands of people coming together in the street and being in community together and making one demand how much it can change, right? And in just a couple of months, we're seeing such drastic changes in and around the country. It makes a lot of sense that there would be a lot of control over the permitting process and how people actually take control over their streets and change the design to more serve their needs and the purpose of community building and empowerment, because they're incredibly effective spaces for people to come together and to create a sense of collective purpose. And when there's collective purpose, there's not really any stopping that collective, right? And that is a threat to you know, the structures that are currently in place.
Great, thanks. I think we're coming to the end. We did have a comment from Arlene Tang. Thanks for writing in and letting us know how much you love walking in San Francisco, and that you are hoping that there's going to be a lot less traffic on our streets. So thanks for writing in. Katie, do you have any last comments?
We love you, San Francisco. I love the streets of San Francisco. I love seeing you in the streets of San Francisco. And we look forward to helping you get into those streets in a safe way sometime soon. Great.
So thanks, Katie. And thanks for making me do this show. I'm actually having a good time now, so thanks. Thank you, Sonic, Rogelio, for being great sponsors and Rogelio being a great guy to work with. Our production crew, we've got Angelica behind the scenes, making sure this all works and sending me messages and keeping us from going over time and all that sort of thing. Melly, our social media guru, has been pretty fantastic. Thank you for your patience while I learned to understand all this stuff. Come back tomorrow for Feature Friday on our Sunday Streets Facebook page. Katie will be back again, giving you tips on small businesses opening in the Excelsior. And come back next week to join me talking with Faye Damawi, the Executive Director of the San Francisco Urban Film Festival. And that will be on the Livable City Facebook page. Thanks again, and see you soon.